Welcome. This is Steve Shadrack, founder of Support Raising Solutions. This podcast is part of a 15-week series launching your first 100 days after boot camp. Today's episode is hosted by our friend, Aaron Babiar.
My guest today is Ellis Goldstein, who has been with Crew for many years. Ellis, it has been just a joy to be developing a friendship with you over the past several years. And rather than me saying too much to introduce you, I'll say a little bit, but I'd like for you to share a little bit more. I know you have been super important within Crew and in shaping their culture and in helping so many ministry leaders become fully funded and go throughout the world, not just stateside. And you've had a really key part in all of that. Tell us a little bit about your title and your role, because I know it's more about who you are than your title. But tell us a little bit about how you ended up doing what you're doing, and what are you doing?
Well, I'm the National Director for Ministry Partner Development for Crew. And the way that it started out was after spending 8 years on campus, various campuses, I was asked to take on a role in one of our regional offices. And it was a role that encompassed a couple of things, but one of them was helping staff with support. Ever since I joined staff, going back a little bit before that, when I came on our staff, is that for whatever reason it seemed like I was able to raise my support. When I first joined staff, it took me 5 weeks to raise support. And I didn't have that many contacts coming from a Jewish background. The Lord just blessed it. I even had a hitchhike to support appointments when my car died. And I was just driven to raising my support. Now, it all didn't go perfectly.
I do admire your dedication in hitchhiking, though I can't say I recommend hitchhiking.
I don't either. And I tell people that's not what we teach people to do. I was just desperate and had to do that. But and so I had a number of years where of learning how to raise support myself. I started really as a student because when I wanted to go to conferences, I couldn't go to my family for any funding. We didn't have much money. And so I began to raise support as a student and began to just watch what our staff did. And so as the years went by, I came to a point where when I was asked to take on this new role within our regional office, one part of that was helping our staff with support. And my only training that I had was a little bit of training when I joined our staff. And then also there was one of the men that was coaching our staff. I just so admired him. And in a sense, he became sort of an informal mentor towards me. And so I watched what he did, and I tried to mimic it in some ways. And so it started out where knowing very little, and I'll never forget one gal that I was coaching, and her situation was really tough. She had raised a lot of one-time money for her first year, and that wasn't a great strategy.
No.
And so that year was up, and so she had to re-raise her support, and it was tough. And I remember what I said to her, because I didn't have many ideas at that point, and it was all new to me and learning to coach people. And I said to her, I don't know. I'm not sure what to do, but I know that God does. And that was a key principle of learning to lean on the Lord for those ideas which come over the years. And so for the next 10 years, I was coaching staff in one of the challenging places in the country, in the Northeast, in how to raise support. And that was my boot camp, so to speak, of where I learned about how to help our staff raise support before I was asked to take on our national position about 10 years later.
Right. Now, I know that you're still active with Crew. Approximately how many people in an average year are you able to be a direct part of their training and their raising their support?
Approximately 400 a year.
Amen. Praise the Lord. That's awesome. That's great. Well, I know you read the email that has sent out that's parallel to this recording that we're doing today. And obviously the theme of that is it's about aiming high. It's about setting goals. It's about a lot of different things, but really having the Lord. But I know that one of the things that I have respected not only about you, but about Crew is you guys are pretty serious about making sure that your leaders have some clear and high goals when they're involved with raising their support. Unpack that a little bit for us, please. What does that look like?
Well, it was a lot of people remember Howard Hendricks, famous prof at Dallas Theological Seminary. And one of the things he always used to say is that if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. And so we found that one of the things that we needed to do was to help our new staff members set goals that they needed to accomplish weekly. When people join our ministry, they don't necessarily, they don't know what goals to set. If I was to say, what goals would you set? There would be some that are highly motivated. I remember one guy, and he was getting 20 some appointments a week, which really far exceeds most people. But he was just one of those few people that were just highly driven. And I found that most people, they're just not natural fundraisers, and they don't know how to go about it. And so what we had to do is just start setting goals, especially if you want to see people report in a timely way.
And when you say not natural fundraisers, you don't mean that they can't raise their funds, but they don't understand they don't have the competency of understanding what it actually takes to do it.
Right.
It's not their heart or their calling or anything like that.
I mean, there's some people that is just part of their DNA and they figure it out. But most people, it's like evangelism. Some people have the gift of evangelism. And then there's the rest of us that have to learn how to do it.
Right, yeah.
And it's the same thing with raising support, that some people, a few people are natural at it, and then everybody else has got to learn how to do it. And so what we found that we needed to do so that people could report in a timely way was to start helping them set goals.
Okay, great. Now, when you help them set goals, that process, and I know there's a lot of different ministry organizations that do this a lot of different ways, but within Cru, are you able to dictate that, or do you sit down with people and set that with them? I know there's some people that do part-time, but it seems like a lot of your team, they intend to go full-time. And so if I'm brand new, I'm just starting out, and I know I need to set some goals, and really my goal is to get fully funded, but all those goals in between, what does that look like? I mean, in an actual week, like how many phone calls, how many text messages, how many appointments, like at what point can I say, okay, I was successful this week, regardless of the funds that did or didn't come in?
No, that's great. That's great. First of all, we don't ask our staff to participate in setting those goals, our new staff. I don't expect our new staff to know what goals to set. And so we set the bar for them. And that involves from setting their support goals itself, as far as what they're going to be raising for their monthly support or their one-time money that they need to raise. And so we set those goals for them. Secondly, when it comes to what their weekly activity is going to be like, we set those goals for them. And so we set the bar. We ask our staff to go after a minimum of 10 appointments a week. And we even take that down to how many times you dial the phone, and that can include texts and other things and other kinds of contacts that they have. But one of the things I started doing as I began to think about this some more, said, what is it that we really want to see our new staff accomplish? Well, the main goal has got to be setting appointments. And so when we said it, that's the thing that's sort of like in bold and caps, and that's your goal. And so if you want to know what you're supposed to do this week, it's going after those appointments.
Okay. I know that sometimes people who graduate from boot camp, they know they want to get appointments. However, and by the way, we have boot camp. We have different ways that people come across support raising solutions at our information. They might read the God Ask. They might go through foundations. There's a number of different ways. So I'm not excluding anybody in this. But sometimes when people have gone through foundations, or they've completed the boot camp, or even just read the God Ask, they're still not real clear on some good work goals, so that at the end of the week they feel like they've accomplished something. I had a friend one time who he tracked his phone calls that he made, and no, I mean, I'm not saying that's not a bad thing to track, but he wasn't getting funded. He wasn't getting very many appointments, and so if I were to go back, I probably would have been a lot more specific with him as far as what that looks like, as far as actually getting appointments. So you started to share a little bit. You said something about 10 with appointments. Unpack that for me. For instance, if my goal is to get 10 appointments, but really I made 20 phone calls, so I tried. Isn't that good enough?
Well, what we'll tell the staff is this: is that the first of all, let me define an appointment.
Okay.
An appointment is a presentation and an ask.
Okay.
And so if it doesn't have both of those in there, I realize that an ask, the presentation could be shorter, but there has to be the presentation, the ask. If that's not in there, then that's not a support appointment.
Okay.
There could be other kinds of appointments you have to get referrals, things like that, but we're really focused on getting those support appointments. One of the things that we do in our training is we sort of project out that if you're making X number of phone calls a week or you're having X number of appointments a week, it will take you X period of time to raise the support. And when people begin to see that only a few appointments a week will take, let me just exaggerate, forever to raise your support, hopefully that's going to provide at least some internal motivation that they really need to go for it. But also what I find is that what we'll do is we'll clearly define how many appointments they need to go after each week. We'll also break it down saying, here's how many contacts you need to have. And so we're always helping them in the area of getting more contacts. That's the need for, I don't know, a Christian worker who doesn't need more contacts. But they've got to keep going after those appointments. That's the bottom line. And one of the things that we have done is we realize that in our ministry, we have people that are coming to us that are able to work full-time when raising support, and there's others that they just haven't been able to raise enough funding so they can quit their job and start raising support. So we start out, especially with some of the mid-career people that join us, is that if they're working full-time, we will modify those goals according to the number of hours. But one of the things I really stress with our new staff is the number of hours they need to put into raising support during the week.
Focused time.
Focus on it.
Not distracted by trying to watch the kids at the same time and do the dishes and all that stuff, but really straight up focus.
Yeah, there's going to be some sacrifices that families have to make while raising support. I'll just tell you one quick story. Years ago, there was someone who was one of our new staff was a mid-career person and was not making any progress at all. And what was, I'll say, distracting him is that he was working overtime in his in the employment that he had. And what I tell our new staff today is that I understand if you have to have some supplemental employment while raising support, but you have to put in these number of hours. You cannot work overtime. We are going to expect and really reinforce that you have to put in X number of hours to raise support, because if you don't do that, the consequences is that they won't get their support raised.
Right. You
just can't raise your support if you're just putting in a few hours a week.
Unpack that part a little bit for me, because I think that's a concern I know I have, and I know you've had it within Crew as well, but I have it for the people that are going through the different forms of SRS and people figuring out how to grow in their competency of the support raising process. If someone only gets, let's say, 2 appointments a week or 3, now they might be wanting more, but they're just going to be like, you know what, I'm gonna make phone calls on Friday night from 7 to 8, and I'll take the appointments that God gives me for the next week, and that's it. Play that out for me. I think you and I both know, but tell me a story, because I'm sure you know some people like this. What ultimately happens 2, 3, 4 months down the road to someone that's only getting a few appointments every week?
We know that raising support, there's a spiritual battle that's going on. And what I have found is that when that is extended over a period of time with not much progress, that person is going to get weary and begin to doubt that this is ever going to work. They're not seeing the success that they need to see. Now, and that has a real negative effect upon their motivation. One of the things that I have seen is that momentum helps create success. And if a person doesn't get momentum right away when they come out of the training, they may never succeed in raising support. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hold them highly accountable to going after those 10 appointments a week. And our coaches will work with them and help them figure it out if they're not getting them. But you just are not going to succeed by just doing a few appointments a week. One of the other things is I want to help our staff think through some good times to call people. Now that people have cell phones, which years ago you were dependent on landlines, but with people having cell phones, you can contact people you can call almost any time during the day. It's not confined to just the evenings anymore. And so I want to help our staff to be a little creative when they're calling people. If you've been calling people at a certain time and you're not getting appointments, you've got to try calling at different times during the day to do that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there. altering the times you call and making changes can be a big deal because there are some people that won't answer the phone after dinner time, and there's other people that will only answer the phone after dinner time. You don't know. And so if you're aiming high, then you're adjusting your life a little bit. You're adjusting your schedule and go, hey, I want to make some phone calls maybe from 1 to 2 today, but then I'm also going to make some phone calls perhaps from 6:30 to 7:30 tonight or whatever. There's different variations of that.
And what you're bringing up there is that you have got to plan your week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I realize that in raising support that there's some things sometimes during the week you've got to be a bit fluid, a little bit flexible.
Sure.
But you've got to start out your week by planning when you're going to make your phone calls, and you've got to stick to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the hard things is that people are not people can be discouraged and they don't want to do it. And so I suggest a trick that another staff member suggested to me. You're going to start making your phone calls. Call a friend first. Talk with that friend. Go ahead and pray with them.
Yeah.
And then start making your phone calls.
Yeah.
But you have got to develop the discipline that you're going to put that time in. In order to connect with people, there's some work you've got to do ahead of time.
That's like priming the pump too. Kind of get your tongue working and your heart working,
exactly,
and everything else
and
working.
So whatever it takes to connect with people. If texting him is going to work, saying, Joe, do you have about 10 minutes tonight? I'd like to talk with you.
Yeah.
Whatever you need to do it so that you can connect with people.
Great. Now, we're starting to talk a little bit about organization and time management, and of course, that's not too much of the focus of this particular email or recording. But briefly, I know Crew has put a wonderful tool out there that you leave it open to people. It's called MPDX, and what a blessing I know that is to so many different gospel workers. We have chosen as SRS, we don't pick the software that's going to win, so to speak. We know there's a lot of different ones out there, but MPDX has been kind of a heart thing that Crew has done. Tell us, just kind of as our last thing, how does that software, if you're using that software, how does it help people? We're going to start that whole sentence over. Tell us, how does that software encourage someone who's raising support to aim high? How does that help people actually set some goals and reach some goals? Why is using a software like MPDX so crucial in all of that?
When you're raising support, you have got to get organized. You can't just depend on slips of paper. You're going to forget too many things. Like when you're going to call somebody, you've got to have a place where you've written down, if you've learned some things about them. So let's say you've gone on Facebook and you have learned some things about that person. That's going to be real important when you have the conversation with them. You've got to be able to have a plan that's going to help you with creating some tasks. Like this, I need to follow through with this person. This is the next step that I need to do with them. Mm-hmm. And so the software, whether it's MPDX or another one, it helps you keep track of your progress raising support. If you don't have something to help you organize your contacts, you may end up doing something that I did. I'll never forget I did this. I called someone. I was using slips of paper, and I called someone, talked to that person. About 10 minutes later, called another person, and she said, "You just called me."
Oh.
You don't recover from something like that real easily, but but you can see that I've remembered that for probably over 30 years. Wow. It has stuck with me because of the mistake that I made. And so when you're in the midst of raising support, there's so much that's flying around you, and you've got to organize yourself. One of the things that MPDX helps do for our staff, they can see the progress that they're making.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so important. You need to see the progress you're making. And if you're making good progress, you need to celebrate that. There's a principle you need to keep in mind that no matter what you're doing is that there's God's job and there's your job. Mm-hmm. God is the one who's going to cause people to say yes to meeting with you, to saying yes to supporting you. But what MPDX represents, or any other software, is the work that you have to do. Mm-hmm. And if you want to achieve your goal, then you're going to have to plan for it and go for it. It's up to God to cause the results, but you have got to do your work. You will, and if you're only putting in a few hours a week, if you're only getting a few appointments a week, you're never going to achieve that goal.
So aiming high is it's really about achieving the vision that God's put in front of you.
Let me throw in this other thing.
Please.
We may all remember the Hurricane Katrina, and the devastation that came as a result of that. Now imagine you were raising support in that area when that hurricane hit. And you would probably end up losing some of your support. Well, one of our staff called me, and he was raising support, and he decided that he felt that he should take a little bit more time to raise support because he thought he was going to lose some support as a result of the hurricane, which made sense to me. But what really impressed me about him was that he was getting about 20 appointments a week, and that's not something I see everybody do. It was really easy to tell him, go for it, and go ahead and take the extra time. And I knew that he would be able to replace the support he lost because he was highly motivated and he was aiming high of going after 20 appointments a week. And that's just impressive to see a person that intent on getting their support raised.
Well, Ellis, I really appreciate you joining us today and speaking into more on this topic on aiming high. I know that we have a lot of people who are going to be listening to this that are going to be raising support that maybe it's just starting to sink in that they're going to have some really smart goals in front of them if they're going to do their part correctly. So I appreciate your wisdom and sharing of your time and speaking into this. And thank you for the work that you do with Cru. Ellis, it's a pleasure to call you a friend and a co-laborer in this ministry, and God bless you.
Thanks for joining us. We encourage you to listen and subscribe to the SRS podcast that answers questions and dives into topics relevant to ministry partner development. For more resources, browse our website, supportraisingsolutions.org.